Good evening, everybody. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Margaret Miller, and I have the great pleasure to direct the Contemporary Art Museum Graphic Studio, the public art program, and a new program we have over in St. Petersburg in Harbor Hall called Generator. We just installed Edison Pennifield there, so I hope you'll see that if you happen to be in St. Petersburg. Skyway 2024 is a triennial exhibition, and it brings together 5 museums in the region and all of the counties in which those museums exist. So the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg, the Ringling Museum in Sarasota. The Sarasota Art Museum is the newest museum to join this group, and they're with the Ringling College of Art and Design, and the Tampa Museum of Art. Michael Tamor sort of started this whole thing several years ago, and of course the USF Contemporary Art Museum. Evan Garza was the guest juror for Skyway. He's an independent curator, curatorial fellow at MassMoCA in North Adams, Massachusetts, a Fulbright scholar where he was at the Irish Museum of Modern Art in Dublin, the director of a biennial in Texas, and he served as director of public art at Rice University from 2016 to 2019. The other curators associated with each participating museum are Christopher Jones, from curator of photography and media art at the Ringling Museum, Catherine Pill, who I see is here tonight. Where are you, Catherine? There you are. She is the senior curator of contemporary art at the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg. Joanna Robotham, who's also here tonight, I wonder why, but she's here tonight, and she's the curator of modern and contemporary art at the Tampa Museum of Art. And Ola Weissek is also one of the curators from the Ringling Museum of Art, and Rangsuk Yoon, for senior curator of the Sarasota Art Museum of Ringling College. I want to mention that the directors, we've gotten together quite recently talking about this exhibition and where it could go. Could it become more global in the next 3 years? And so the directors of the museum, if you don't know them, Michael Tamor, director of the Tampa Museum, Stephen Hyde, director of the Ringling Museum, Virginia Shearer, director of the Sarasota Art Museum, and Stanton Thomas and Darcy Schuler were leading the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg, and Claudio Rodriguez has just been announced as the new executive director and will join the museum in October. So we're extraordinarily excited about our version of the Skyway. The Contemporary Art Museum has an amazing, small but amazing staff. They're all here tonight. So I thank all of you who are on the staff of the Contemporary Art Museum for helping put this together, to do the loan forms and arrange for the loans, and to do the beautiful design. So we're delighted to have several of the artists that are participating in the exhibition here tonight, and it is now my pleasure to introduce our amazing Curator-at-Large, Christian Viveros-Fauné, and he'll take over from here and introduce you to the artists and moderate the panel discussion. Okay, Christian, you're on.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you all for being here. Thank you guys for being here. Build bridges, not walls, right? That should be our motto. Believe it was the novelist Ralph Ellison who said, education is all a matter of building bridges, which is, I think, matters to every one of our institutions, every one of the institutions involved in Skyway, but certainly to us as an institution at the University of South Florida. That's what I think Skyway is largely about, sort of building bridges between artists, between institutions, but also, mind you, between the museum, or the museums in this case, and wider audiences in the area and beyond. I think that's one of the continuing challenges of institutions everywhere, and it's especially a challenge when institutions sort of work together. That's part of the mission, that's part of the goal. You know, obviously this show was named after the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which for a while didn't have a great history, right? In the 1980s, there were just a couple of mishaps. But we'd like to think of it our joint effort as part of obviously the renewed Skyway Bridge, the one that started in 2017 in its sort of triennial iteration of shows. I think I'm right in saying that the 2024 Skyway event is the largest and most ambitious version thus far. And of course, the mission of the show is still what it was in 2017, and that is to show the best contemporary art that the greater Tampa area has to offer, right? So that's what you're going to see in the 5 participating institutions with Skyway, which is obviously entirely what brings us here today to this conversation with these 4 artists. They are Elisabeth Condon, Bruce Marsh, Bradford Robotham, and Susanna Wallin. They are all very different kinds of artists. They make radically different kinds of work. They originally hail, all of them, from different places outside of Florida, which I find to be something that is really, really interesting. The multiplicity of, well, origins and certainly perspectives, and you'll see that in the work. But they also have obviously something else in common, and that is that along with the other artists in the show, and I'll name them now: Keith Crowley, John Gerbex, Karen Tucker, Kuykendall, Kawi Lofgren, Eric Ondina, Sebastian Orablas, Andres Ramirez, and Aaron Titus, that they all kind of jointly inspired the exhibition that's at CAM now. As Margaret mentioned, that's where we're going to retire to after our conversation. I don't want to roll this off the stage, do I? And you'll have the possibility, for those of you who haven't actually seen the show, to get a break from the heat and walk in and get some air conditioning and see what we're all essentially sort of talking about here today. The show is called, that is the show that we represent, as it were, at CAM, 12 Ways of Looking at a Landscape. The title's basically cribbed from a Wallace Stevens 1917 poem, 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. I think probably most of you are aware of that poem, have read it, have heard about it. Why did we come up with a thematic? Well, I mean, I think in part it was about trying to find an entry point into artworks that sort of expand original ideas around landscapes. That was kind of my particular brief in looking through work that came into the open call for Skyway. But I can tell you, the show isn't, and the images that you're seeing scrolling back behind us, which are all representative images for all 4 artists here. These are not your run-of-the-mill collection of pretty pictures. These are instead landscapes that engage the idea of landscape shall we say, in different ways than one thinks of landscapes normally, and that is as social landscapes, or as emotional landscapes, or internal landscape, or political landscape, or mental landscape, domestic landscape, realistic landscape. You get the idea. That's really sort of the brief, to expand a fairly easy idea through complex works and complex visions in a way that they actually match, and also in rubbing up against each other, fire different kinds of surprising connections, or at least that's what the curator wanted to do. You will be the judge of that, as will the artists. Again, if you haven't seen the show, get your butt over there. This is a perfect opportunity. And you know, we're also hoping that this conversation is something of an invitation to do exactly that. Now, before I get into introducing each one of them, maybe we can just give Elisabeth and Bruce and Susanna and Brad a round of applause for just an excellent outing and for being here. Now, very briefly, and believe me, these are not really their bios. This is sort of the shortened version. Otherwise, we'd be here for another 10 minutes with me reading them because they're all quite accomplished. So I'll start with Elisabeth. Elisabeth was born in Los Angeles, California. She lives and works in Tampa, Florida. Yeah. Her paintings approach landscape as an artificial construction, as something simultaneously real and imagined. She scavenges, as you will see, and recombines elements from diverse sources and inspirations from nature, from recycled material, vintage wallpaper, nightclubs, etc. This complicates the unfolding of time within her pictures, and while her wall-mounted paintings, one of which is on the loop, liberate what she called ribbons of color, her floor pours sort of complicate that unfolding significantly. Transforming patterns into calligraphy and sort of a liquid form of time and space. Bruce, who is right next to Elisabeth, born in Inglewood, California, lives and works in Ruskin, Florida. He strives to make paintings that connect with received notions about the appearance of things. Over the years, he's used a wide range of subjects and processes such as collage, screen printing, stencils, airbrush, photography, watercolor, and digital software. According to Bruce, content creeps into the paintings unbidden. I love that from a realist painter. While his artworks always examine the nature of perception. Susanna was born in Lund, Sweden. And obviously she lives and works in Tampa. Her films combine experimental traditions with narrative practices by engaging questions about what we do with our time, our bodies, and the tools we are given to live a life. Her films, the films that we have on view at the museum, are extremely mysterious and extremely enigmatic. Lizzie, which was the film that sort of attracted, that you submitted for Skyway, is the result of days spent in the aftermath of the death of a neighbor, someone who passed away in the house where she had lived her entire life. This is in Tampa on the Hillsborough River, gifting Susanna an electric organ in the process. Receiving this gift, Susanna said, was like a wild riddle from the dead. What care and attention might we give to someone we never knew, she asked. How might one's stories continue in the hands of another? And then, last but not least, Brad Robotham, born in Kingston, Jamaica, lives and works in Tampa, Florida. His transformative self-portraits, and you might be astounded to hear that they're self-portraits, but we'll come to that later, explore the idea of primordial landscapes. The photos are examinations of the artist's own body as a series of journeys to fantasize landscapes. They dramatize arms, legs, and joints as promontories, mountains, and canyons. The images are shot and printed as conceived at the moment of capture, and they are not digitally altered in any way. Okay, let me just say the obvious before we get into sort of a give and take, and that is that this is very much a conversation. I think I mentioned this to you guys before. If you have questions for each other as we start sort of like jibber-jabbering, or if you have questions for me, let's go at it, right? I think that's far more interesting than having me continually sort of go, and you, and you, and you. You can even ask questions of me. I have no guarantee. There are no guarantees that I'll answer them, but we'll see. So here's the question for all of you. How many of you have participated in more than one Skyway exhibition, counting this one? The two of you, yes, and you two have not, right? Because obviously there's been three, one in 2017, one in 2021, and this last one. But I'm kind of curious as to what that experience might have been like for the two of you. You want to start maybe, Elisabeth? What was that? You show a lot, meaning you show a lot I've seen your work in New York. I know that you were recently on a grant in New Orleans. You know, you get around, yet you're here, and you wanted to be in that show, which I believe was the 2017 iteration, correct? So, so tell me a little about that. What drew you to what's functionally an open call, and how did that experience sort of work out?
Well, my motivation was the community I feel here. Good. I taught at USF for 11 years, and I'm attached to the place, you know? And I wanted to participate because I thought over the years, there's been a lot of curatorial talent that has landed in the area, like an amazing amount, and it started to feel extremely exciting, and I wanted to experience working with the curators and seeing what this thing was that was being planned. And it went really well. Where did you show? Tampa, with Joanna.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Who is somewhere here. Where are you, Joanna? Because I don't have my glasses on. There you are. Hello. Bruce, you also showed, I think, in 2017.
Say again?
You also showed in the 2017 Skyway.
Yes.
Yeah. And where did you show? And what did you show, actually?
Well, I showed a couple of paintings from a series about people in very ordinary circumstances, and also some small watercolor figure drawings. I have a figure group once a week, and so those. And being here was almost an arbitrary sort of thing. Being here in Florida. In 1965, I made a big effort to get a job, sent out 100 and some letters, and I got 2 job offers, and one was Oklahoma and one was St. Petersburg. And so it didn't take me any time to decide where I wanted to go. So I ended up in St. Petersburg, and then 4 years later I came to USF, but as source, you know. But one thing about being here and working here is that coming from LA, which is almost virtually a desert, the lush landscapes here, those immense summer skies, and the bodies of water had a huge impact on me. And I think that my work over all those years would have been very different had I stayed in Southern California. And so that's been very important. And another thing that's been very important is painting my surroundings. And so most of the paintings I make happen within very few miles of where I live, or they contain walls of the studio or a view out the window. But
so it's super local in that sense. Yeah. Your work is super local and super tied into
very much local
to being here, to being in the patch, right?
Yeah. Right.
Elisabeth, I didn't ask you what you showed in 2017. Do you remember?
Yeah, I showed 2 flower paintings from my mom's vintage fabric, grief fabric flowers, on linen in a pair. And that came after a trip to China, where the 6 months in Shanghai at the Swatch Art Peace Hotel residency showed me modern China. This is a part of a longer involvement with Chinese painting, which I'm sure will come up again in the course of conversation. But the artifice of contemporary Shanghai, that was 2014 when I was there, led me back to my mother's textiles. My mother was a fierce decorator. She lived and breathed for decorating. And so I started to think about her things in a different way. And as she was also getting older, it was a way to reconnect deeply with her. So I showed 2 of those paintings.
Now, there's a way in which the work, and I'm sort of waiting for it to flash up here, the work that's in the show now is obviously in a completely different way from Bruce's, very much about your patch of territory here, right? Can you tell us a little bit about those works?
Well,
talk about the poor works.
During the pandemic, I watched our neighborhood change. We live really close to, we live on 127th Avenue, so the shortcut to USF. And so during the pandemic, we started walking around the block every day. And we live near a school, like an elementary school, and then some areas next to like a hotel where people live, and there's shootings there sometimes. So, and then neighborhood, like also people just trying to build a block in the middle of those 2 things. So we took walks every day, and I started picking things up off the ground to take home to put into polymer pores as a way to create a found landscape that would be more connected to my actual experience than, like painting it even. Can you guys hear okay? I'm hearing an echo. Okay. So I wanted to actually get that landscape in there, and I thought of these as mud pies, and that I would, and also found composition. Because I just felt like working with textiles as a reference, or even working with ink painting as a reference, like there was a territory of invention that I was starting to miss, or I was starting to develop habits, or I just needed to break habits. And I thought, well, what if I just make a polymer pour every day from this walk that I'm taking, and I have to put everything in? Well, that didn't last very long, because there was this really great shoe sole with a wonderful shape, and then there's too many Bic pen tops, like who cares? So, but I started to make those, and then I started looking at Linda Benglis a lot, and her Fallen paintings from 1969, which actually she only did that year, and then she started getting into puffy foam because the latex that she was using wasn't puffy enough. And I understand that situation, which in this show is resolved with pedestals. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Yeah, but anyway, so the Fallen paintings gave a format for a longer, maybe less, and even less finite or bordered landscape than the mud pies. I'll keep it there.
No, good.
Yeah.
I saw one of these pieces in New York at Westbeth. And I have to say, the platform, boy, does that really sort of like work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting to me that Benglis ran into that problem. The flatness is really a problem. And I think the only person I know who has worked that out is Suzanne Jackson in the Whitney Biennial.
Right.
And I mean, boy, did she work it out. But.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Suzanne Jackson. Brad, again, this is the first iteration of Skyway you participated in. I have to say, the first time I saw your work in that sort of set of slideshows that all the curators were basically looking through, I was surprised to recognize elements that I thought I understood, and then couldn't quite resolve, to be honest with you, until I saw a little note that you'd appended where you mentioned that you'd worked as a studio manager for John Copeland's. And then everything clicked, which was really kind of amazing. Could you tell us a little about, like, that experience working for John Copeland, working through the influence to get to the work that you're making now? By the way, the work he's making now are those really bright looking, again, they look like canyons, they look like promontories, but, I don't know, maybe you want to reveal exactly what they are at some point when they come back up, but.
Sure, I guess as a young art student, I started working for John Copeland's because I was always
By the way,
interested.
let's make sure everyone knows who John Copeland's is. Who was John Copeland?
He was how to explain? He was an influential art critic and writer, and also later in life a photographer who spent the last 20 years of his life photographing his own body in large-scale black and white photographs, numerous exhibitions throughout the world, making prints from 4x5 up to 15 feet tall of his own body in different various segmentations. I guess that's the short version of it.
Yeah, that's a good version. Founder of Art Forum, and then later sort of the editor-in-chief, I think between like 75, 77.
Big on the scene in the
big,
60s.
like a big important dude who then went into photography.
Right. So that environment was kind of intimidating in the beginning. And I came to work for him, he didn't inspire my self-portraits. I came to work to him because I was already interested in self-portraiture before even hearing of who he was. I didn't know his work until I set foot through the studio, to be honest with you. My big influence at that time were more like Lila Ashton Harris and Lucas Samaras and people like that. I was really drawn to their expression and their color, just like the way they would just use punchy color and just tell stories through their photography in a way that was different at that time. In a way, I think it's good and bad to work and assist for some of the more famous artists for a very long time. I was there 10 years. And you're in the shadows, I guess, for a while. So I spent a lot of time working on his ideas, using my creative energy to work on his work, and then his ideas became my ideas for a while, and my ideas became his, and we kind of just sort of melded, and a lot of my black and white photography at that time was very just derivative, and for lack of better words, he thought my color photography was trash, and I was so young. He did? Yeah, he didn't think it was any good, and I was so young at that time, I guess it impacted me, and it made me draw inward from myself. So it took me a while just to sort of get to working and making artwork again. And in terms of just applying for this show, I feel like back in those days, it's like, I guess, 99, like early 2000s, it wasn't so digital applying for submissions. So you had to, many you probably remember, you had to have portfolio in hand and walk around and knock on doors and either face acceptance or rejection face to face, which is a much more difficult thing to do than when you're just submitting online. And I think that some of my experiences probably just led me to just regress more inwards and just make images and not share them with anybody and just kind of keep them to myself. And then when I moved down here, I think, for lack of better terminology, the skies just opened up and things just seemed more open. It seemed like there was more opportunity here. And then when Skyway presented itself, I thought it was a good opportunity to just apply and kind of just dip my toe in the water again on this scale.
Can I ask you the switch to this kind of saturated color, had that already happened before you moved down here?
It had, yeah. I'd photographed with saturated color back in 1996, very, very early on when I was much, much younger. And I was doing it more emotionally, more out of just feelings I was having at the time. A lot of that photography, it's more expressive and more anger and more responsive to current events and things going on in my mind as well as current events. And with this work, I try to detach more from that and be less emotional and just have it be more about the form, more about the light, temperature, more about the color, more about just things that are more universal and still keep it personal, but in a not so in-your-face type of way. Yeah.
Susanna, so you have two videos in the show. Well, one is Lizzie, which I mentioned a little bit about, and which we have some images of. And the other one is Wills Hills, which also is so insanely engaged with landscape. I wonder if you can, because I didn't say a word about it yet, I wonder if you can sort of describe that piece for us in the way it works and what you were thinking when you were making it, whether you realized the level of engagement that you were having with the landscape. I believe there was, but maybe you can tell us.
Which piece are you talking? Which one of them do you mean?
Wills Hills.
Okay. Well, so for me, it's sort of this matrix of different histories, and what I was really interested in was the surface, and that it's just one surface, and that means that everything else is secret. And so I was really interested in those secrets that are here in this landscape.
But what are those secrets? I mean, I should have done a better job of introducing it. So Wills Hills is a play on words, right? And a reference to Lord Hillsborough.
Yeah.
As in Hillsborough County, and every Hillsborough that you can think of from here to North Carolina to Timbuktu. And there's many of them. He was the Secretary of State for Britain's North American colonies from 1768 to 1772. Obviously, that's who the Hillsborough River is named after. So.
Yeah. So, and it's a long investigation, because I'm really interested in where language, how to use language, especially as a filmmaker. How film needs to start with words, usually in scripts, and so traveling on that river a lot, and even my son falling into it, not me having to drag it up. I had this personal relationship to it, and every time I talked about it, I had to talk about this Lord that I also feel, connected to, because I came here from London. I lived in London for many years, right. And I sort of my upbringing is North European. It's in me too. So I was grappling with that wording at the same time as I was writing for films, and sort of trying to write the river and sort of this landscape. So that piece for me is a play with how we inherit those words, and that we have to use them, or how do we subvert them? And I'm trying to do that with Wills Hill. How can I use his name and change it, and even provoke it?
Well, I should say that one of the really cool aspects of Wills Hills, at least in our version at CAM, is that we projected it on the floor, so it feels like a river, right? And it's that river, which, unlike the old Heraclitus line, you can step in it several times. It's never the same one, but yes. And you also have a soundtrack for that, as it were, a score. And what is that?
So that's also sort of thinking about where, so Anything Goes is the soundtrack, but it's also, how you warp that soundtrack, and how you change it, and where does a song end and sound begin. And so I was really interested in sort of the borrowing of existing material and playing with that existing material, and sort of this ecology of when something sort of morphs into something else, especially with editing as well, because I let the ducks fly as they wanted, so that they edited the timing, and the drips in the water edited sort of that rhythm of the piece, that I didn't interfere with, but then I could interfere as much as I wanted with sort of the already found sort of sound that was underneath.
I've already mentioned that as actually I looked up the number of folks in the greater Tampa area that were born outside of the greater Tampa area. Now I've forgotten, but it's actually a very high number. So obviously tremendously cosmopolitan. Probably not quite as cosmopolitan as this group here, but I sort of, the reason I mention that is because as folks who are not originally from the area, I'm curious to hear more about how the area affects your art making. What opportunities it gives you, what gifts it gives you, what opportunities it takes away.
So for
Don't
me, I can
go.
just say, as a, with the camera, it's really, really hard to film here. So that sort of changed my filmmaking a lot, and
Well, why is that?
it became very much more about sound, because you can't quite look through a lens here. It's really steamy.
Because it's foggy.
And it's really sweaty and hard, and you have to take breaks all the time. So you get to know the people you're working with really well during these breaks all the time, because it's impossible, especially if you're outside.
I mean, I can imagine. All I do is walk outside of these glasses, and I experience exactly the same thing. Can't see, I can't see the hand in front of my face. But in other ways, Susanna, is it? I'm not only looking for points of inspiration. I'm also looking for potential, difficulties, some opportunities, maybe not others. And I think you're imbricated in the university, so maybe there are also opportunities there for discourse.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking to everybody else. So I would love for all of you to actually be rushing the microphone right now.
I think in New York, was where I lived previously to coming here, you're just surrounded by art nonstop. I think I was speaking to somebody the other day. I used to work in the galleries in Chelsea. Then I would spend my lunch hour just going to see shows, and you have this fully immersive life where you can see every show, know what's going on, constantly, supposedly, be inspired. And I think I photographed a lot more when I was there, and I think coming here was a big adjustment, just because I see lovely, wonderful things to photograph here, but the city's not very walkable at times for me, and like you say, it's very hot, and I did learn that the gear gets humid and it does kind of fog up. But then something else also happens being here, that in New York I had this tiny studio apartment, and I could make work, and I had thousands and thousands of pictures I couldn't ever look at. I didn't have space to print them, to blow them up big, to look at them. Not that I have a palace now, but I do have a wall, at least that I can print big and put things up on a wall. I bought a magnetic board that I can tack prints up, stand up, look back. So now I find myself being much more introspective and much more, like the pace has slowed, but the thought process has improved, at least for me, just mentally, just like how much more I can think about my work and create my work. Fabricating down here is a little bit more difficult. Gary was a big help, helping me just fabricate the work for this show. Having prints and wanting to make them big is a little bit different than the actual having to do it down here. I had to source a lot of different people, and mounting big works was a bit of a challenge down here, but I did find a crew, to work with that was very reliable, and once I found the right people, I felt like it was a big help, but it's give and take, and I think that working down here, it provides a different, maybe where I am in my life right now, just a different perspective for making artwork. That has so far been better.
And being able to afford a studio, I mean, what an amazing thing, right? I mean, that's not a given in New York City. It just simply isn't. Less so now than it was, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So that's certainly a gift. What are the trade-offs for you, Elisabeth?
I have a place in New York.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I keep a place in New York.
Yeah.
So, and I always have since I've been here. But there's no comparison with the space. So I think we all know that. And my studio in New York is actually closed right now for construction, the Clemente. So there's that.
You're there.
Yeah, and but coming to Tampa, I built a studio. We bought a house on the way to school when I was teaching at USF that on almost an acre of land, like a really old lot in this kind of forgotten neighborhood. And I built a studio, and that is the luxury of my life. Like, I did not realize that would just concretize everything. And it's, sometimes I look around, I'm like, yeah, this is really perfect for what I need. And it's like, oh yeah, I built it. and so there's that. And then there's the quiet. So the experiences of growing up in the San Fernando Valley of LA in the 70s, smoking cigarettes under the highway overpass and wearing blue eyeshadow and feeling daring in a peasant blouse, like that kind of boredom that leads to that adolescent reverie is also here, and it's really creative. And that is, I mean, New York is, as we all know, just a wonderful city, but it is perpetually devoted to the cycle of exhibitions, and everyone is committed 100%, and that's how you have the conversation. But you don't get that drifting adolescent flotation of mind that is so important. I mean, I say adolescent because that's where I work from, but that kind of free zone space, I think, is really, really important.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I mean,
Yeah.
Honest to God's truth. I've been in New York 30 years, but there are many ways in which it's provincial. It doesn't really stop to have deep thoughts. And I do think that that's one of the great sort of gifts of being in a place like this, that, you can arrest time, as it were, for a bit and really delve, right? And another thing, as wonderful as the cycling of exhibitions and information is, it often leads to confusion, and I've seen it happen with generations of artists at this point, too, because I've been there more than 30 years, particularly people coming from abroad, and they come in thinking that they're going to at least survive, if not take over the city, and they just leave confused. Seriously, it's just too much for folks, and often for folks who excel elsewhere. So I think that's something to really sort of consider, right? Anyone else? Bruce, actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it was a matter of necessity. I had 2 kids when I started teaching here. It was a matter of necessity to be here.
Yeah.
And since I've just become hugely attached to it. And at this point, we have a place on a river, and I can't imagine a more conducive, productive place for me.
Yeah.
And but the trade-off is isolation. I mean, that we have not extensive or even many contacts of a professional nature, and yet that's a trade-off that we settle for.
Right.
Right. And at this point, it'd be very tempting to just think about getting away from what's become an overgrown, overdeveloped place. But we have such attachments here in terms of children and all the way to great-grandchildren, that make it extremely difficult.
Well, hopefully to some degree, a show like Skyway, a multi-institutional show like Skyway, and I see some of the other curators out here, helps in bridging some of that, well, we said necessary isolation, but, every too much of anything is not a great thing, is it? Yeah. But before, because we're right up against the time of questions, but before we get there, I really do, if you guys have questions for yourselves, would love for you to, and you're not forced to ask them.
I'd be very curious about the process that all of you curators went through in terms of deciding, breaking up the work, deciding on the themes of the work. Obviously you have this theme.
Hammers and tongs, Bruce.
How did that all happen?
We just went at it, man. No, listen, it was remarkably collegial and super constructive. There healthy competition. Let me suggest those 2 words as a model for working. I think most everyone had an idea of who they wanted to work with. I mean, I less so because I'm fresh to the project. Everybody else had sort of been in. Actually, Rangsuk had not. So the 2 of us are sort of Skyway rookies. But as you're looking through work, you're going, right, this jibes with my general concerns. This not so much. This is wonderful. This is, I should say, all that sort of like heavy thinking or pseudo heavy thinking happens, after you get past, the first 4 passes of stuff, right? Because it's in the nature of an open call for there to just be a flood of things that, let's just say they're not so easy to wade through. But I think it was a great process. I'd love to tweak it, but I'm sure we'll be talking about that soon enough. Hopefully not 3 years from now, but sooner than that. Yeah, so I think that's more or less the way that went.
Did you learn anything about Florida?
I
Did it give you anything about
Yeah, it did. I knew your work. I didn't know the three of you, and I'm trying to think if I knew anybody else that's up at CAM now. Did I? I don't think so. So that's, 11 new artists for me, in an area in which I don't get enough of what I would like, and that is studio visits, so, I'd like to be able to fix that personally. Because now I know that there's no shortage of talent. So, and I do think that actually having shows like this, raise the bar on expectations, raise the bar hopefully on exhibition and exhibition making, create relationships where they didn't previously exist. I think that's super important. I'm a firm believer in scene making. I really think that that's how shit gets done. So, All right, should we go to questions? Let's go to some questions. If we have any, yes, please. Yes, Wally.
I'm curious, and have been going back to all three of the Skyways, what is the role of the guest curator?
I can only speak to this one since, unless you guys want to, because you were in the 2017. But I'm a, Skyway rookie, so this is my first, well, now I guess I have some experience because this is under our collective belts. Well, the guest curators, chimes in about their selections. I see a couple of other curators here. I wish we could just move the mic over to them because I think Catherine Pill, for example, back there, has been around for all three of them, and you can answer this question much better than I can. He wrote a very good text. I think that was, yes, please. Yes, please, thank you. Get me out of this pickle.
Yeah, no, the goal from the very beginning was to make sure that artists from this region are getting seen outside of our current curators. As important as that has been for all of us, but we've slowly been trying to make sure that our guest curators have more of a role in the Skyway. And so it's just been a bit of a learning curve in making sure that they can come and actually meet the artists that they are learning more about. But I agree, Evan wrote a beautiful essay. They're commissioned to write an essay, and that's usually the end of it. Because of COVID, Claire St. Bon wasn't able to come in and speak and meet with artists, and we're working with Evan to see what's possible.
Right, so this time around we received close to, I think, 300 submissions. And so I think the first round, we narrowed it down to 100. And then we passed that 100 off to the guest curator to evaluate and kind of sift through them and give us their feedback. We also tried to choose, in the selection of the guest curator, we also try to look at curators around the country and around the world who have done biennials or triennials, because they are a different type of exhibition than, say, just a regular group show or a survey show. So we're very deliberate. We each come up with lists of who we think could be a great guest curator. And since Evan had done work on the Texas Biennial, had some roots here, connections in the South, we thought he'd be a good selection for this year.
And the intent is exposure.
Exactly.
Christian, we should probably mention that there is a catalog.
Yes.
Available, and that I should have credited Stan's store for his.
Yeah, There's a wonderful catalog. And Cam also produced, I wish I had it here, actually, you'll see it at the museum. A lovely feuilleton, the English word is escaping me, brochure. Other questions? No? Oh, yes, please, thank you.
So now that you've, with the accumulation of all the artists and, curating them together in these spaces, do you find as your work is displayed next to other artists that there's dialogue going on that you didn't notice before until it was placed next to another artist? And kind of what dialogue were you finding that was interesting?
I say something to that because I felt it's my work deals with time and so it felt very different from a lot of the work in the show, and I thought it was interesting because it sounded loud, and I'm used to my work being very quiet. So all of a sudden I had this other relationship to my work because of the show it was in. So that was interesting.
Yeah, because your work is the only one with actual
Yeah,
audio. Yeah. So if you're whispering in a room, you're the only sound.
Yeah, and I'm used to my films whispering,
Right.
So being the quiet one in the.
Right.
Yep.
But I did. I mean, it's a really great question. Like, I even saw, first of all, just making those big pours was really a huge experience. And then seeing my painting next to one of them was like, oh. And then Tony Palms wrote a assessment of the show. It's pretty thorough on the Pinellas County website. And he described, it was just so great. It was the sensory description, like, yeah, well, he was talking about the guy next to me, Sebastian Ore, I think his name is, and that he was talking about the blue color of the still lives, and then how, like you were going down this volcanic mountain and sliding down this, landscapey type thing, and then going into this blue lake, it's not that's not my perception so much, but it was just so interesting to see how somebody would respond. And then with regard to the entire show, like the unfolding of landscape in different ways, the architectonics of Brad's work, and then the intimacy of Susanna's, which, speaking of time, took some time to take the whole thing in, and by the time you're through in that makeshift cottage environment, watching this legacy transpire, you have entered another space. So it was really exciting in that way.
And it's interesting because when we apply for Skyway, we don't know the theme. It's going to be landscape.
Well, there is no theme.
Yeah, I just submit my work, and that happened to be what I put in, and it's more Christian's job just to put that together, and then we have the curiosity as well, like how is this all going to come together? So seeing the work for the first time, it does take you on this sort of journey where you see my work and you see a more traditional landscape, then you see how Bruce uses color, and then Susanna's work is so personal, and you have literal landscape, figurative landscape, then you have landscape of memory, just different, everybody just using their own personal experiences to tell stories, and then it just takes you through the flow of the exhibition in a very nice way.
I'll be slightly impolitic here and say that, I've done a couple of biennials before. I did one in Dublin in 2011. It almost cost me about 5 years of my life, and another one in Portland, Oregon last year. Biennials, triennials, biennials, quinquennials, they need a theme. They need a theme, and it's tough to do them as open calls. Those are challenges we have for the future. I'm sure this is a conversation we can pick up on later, but that was really one of the reasons why I thought we needed at CAM to have thematics, so that we'd be able to sort of like pinion around, however basic the idea was, a basic idea around which we could pinion different kinds of work and draw relationships, because without it, it's just a little too much of nothing. But anyway, that's me.
I'd mention too that it's impossible to walk through the show without thinking about what you're doing and what the other people are doing, and it's impossible to walk through there without being challenged, about your ideas being challenged. And I found that a very refreshing thing about the show.
Well, it's never as good a compliment to hear something like that than to hear it from an artist participating in the show. So thank you. And I think with that, unless there are other questions, we can probably, oh, there are more questions. Yes, please.
So, I just don't think those artworks are.
Speak up, speak up.
I just want to say that these artworks are amazing. So there's just that. But I had the question. I was curious, listening to how apparently, if I'm correct, this collage artworks, they had no theme, like no set theme, right? Am I correct about that? Sorry.
No, just speak up.
Did it have a set theme when giving with the artwork?
Did it have a set what?
Did the artworks have?
Yes, it did. It did. It's a very loose idea of landscape, but to be able to expand that out to as many.
So with that theme, and your artistic mind is now coming up with the artwork that you made, did you have a fixed thought of what you wanted your art piece to say to the people that looked at them? And then after those artworks were put on display, did that line of what you wanted people to see change at all in any way?
Let me just, before they answer the question, because it's really for them, let me just say that the theme is an imposition on the work. That is, they all were making this kind of work before I arrived at a theme that I thought could lasso their work together. Now, you guys.
I'm gonna just grab this one for a minute and just say that those long pours, those are complicated to make. It's like a big deal. Like, I'm gonna pour now for these, this 22 feet or something. It's just a lot goes into it. So I had no idea what they were gonna be. And so in terms of wanting what people would get out of it, no idea. But I think that something that's really important to me personally as an artist, and hopefully people looking at my work, is that I see something I haven't seen before. Not just like innovation for innovation's sake, but that I'm pushing as hard as I can against the expected.
Anyone else want to take that?
I also thought it was really interesting to not sort of have that clear, not write a script and sort of nudge, this is what you need to think right now, and sort of manipulate sort of the story like that, but to just throw it up in the air, because that's what I felt this organ was doing. It was just like, with Lizzie is the piece I'm talking about, it was just like throwing up all the notes in the air and just to sort of grab them all, but you can't, so what do you choose? So that overwhelming feeling of it being all of the notes all at once was for me really interesting, for them to sort of take out subject matter from. So that was an interesting way for me to work.
I think to further just add to that, I think the origin of creating an image, it starts from within. So you don't think about the audience for the most part. You're just thinking about yourself and what you want to say. I guess you have an idea that it's for yourself in the beginning, and then you don't care if anybody sees it. You're just working through it, and then at a certain point, obviously, you want to make it public. And then I guess it's our job to just make sure that you guys consume it in a way that portrays the way we're feeling to you, and hopefully that comes across in the final product.
Speaking of consuming, shall we get to consuming some food and beverage? I think with that, we'll call it a wrap, and thank you so much for coming out. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being brilliant. Thank you.